"Are you sure you want to do this?" Chloe Price squeezed the frayed canvas strap of her tote bag. The early spring wind in Pittsburgh carried a biting chill that cut straight through her cheap trench coat. Her stomach churned, a heavy block of nausea settling just below her ribs. She stared at the concrete steps of City Hall. This contract marriage, an agreement her late grandfather had sealed with the Montgomery over 50 years ago, when both men were still alive and she was not yet born, felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Her grandfather had believed in old-world promises. The two families had been business partners once, and the betrothal was meant to bind their bloodlines. But that was another era. Chloe had never even met Harrison Montgomery until 2 weeks ago, when a lawyer showed up at her door with a copy of the agreement and a single option: marry the Montgomery heir or lose the inheritance her grandfather had left to her mother. She had chosen the marriage, not because she wanted to, but because she couldn't bear to lose what should have been hers. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. It had no special markings, just a clean, unassuming Audi. The rear door opened. Harrison Montgomery stepped out. He wore a dark suit with no visible logo, but the fabric draped over his broad shoulders with a precision that made Chloe take a half step back. He stood nearly 6'3". The sheer physical space he occupied made her chest feel tight. He walked up to her. His gaze dropped to her nose, which was flushed red from the cold. A muscle in his jaw twitched, but his expression remained entirely flat. He held out a paper cup. The heat radiating from the cardboard sleeve seeped into the freezing air. "Take it," he said. Chloe reached for the coffee. Her frozen fingertips brushed against his knuckles. A sharp jolt shot up her arm. She yanked her hand back instantly. "Ah!" she gasped, her shoulders jerking up. "Ah!" she gasped, her shoulders jerking up. Harrison frowned. He reached into his trouser pocket and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief. Without asking for permission, he pressed the cotton square directly onto her skin. Chloe's heart skipped a beat. She tried to pull her wrist away, but his large hand clamped down on her forearm. His grip was immovable, heavy and warm. He wiped the coffee stain away. He folded the handkerchief, shoved it back into his pocket, and dropped his hand. Chloe looked up at him, her throat tight. "Harrison," she said quietly, "you don't have to do this." He tilted his head slightly. "It's not the last century anymore. People don't marry because their grandfathers shook hands 50 years ago. You're a free man. You can walk away right now. I won't sue you. I won't tell anyone. We can just pretend this conversation never happened." His expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. A flicker, there and gone. "You want me to break a promise my grandfather made on his deathbed," he said. It was not a question. "I want you to have a choice," Chloe said. "You don't even know me." Harrison stared at her for a long moment. The wind tugged at his tie. "My word is not conditional on convenience, Miss Price. Your grandfather trusted mine. Mine trusted me. I will not be the man who made them liars." Chloe opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no arguing with that kind of stubbornness. She had seen it before, in her own father, before he drank himself into an early grave. The Montgomery men, the rumor said, were carved from the same unyielding stone. She looked down at her scuffed sneakers. "Fine," she whispered, "but don't say I didn't warn you." He said nothing. He simply turned toward the glass doors of City Hall. "Let us go inside and finish the paperwork," he said. His voice left no room for small talk. They walked side by side through the heavy glass doors. At the security checkpoint, the guard took one look at Harrison, straightened his spine, and his expression instantly shifted to one of profound deference. "Right this way, sir," the guard said, his voice dropping an octave in respect. Chloe noticed the unusual display of courtesy, but she simply assumed Harrison was a regular here for building permits, or perhaps municipal workers were just trained to be overly polite to taxpayers. She was too busy digging through her bag to dwell on it. Her fingers trembled as she searched for her social security card. A tube of drugstore lipstick slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the marble floor. It rolled right to the tip of Harrison's polished leather shoe. Harrison bent down. He picked up the cheap plastic tube, rubbed a speck of dust off the casing with his thumb, and handed it back to her. The motion was so fluid, it felt like they had been doing this for years. "Thank you," she whispered. Her face burned. The tight knot of defense in her chest loosened just a fraction. They approached the clerk's window. The woman behind the glass looked between them. "Are you both entering this union voluntarily?" the clerk asked. Chloe hesitated. Her teeth sank into her lower lip. Harrison turned his head and stared at her. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and heavy with an unspoken pressure. Chloe nodded. "Yes." The clerk pushed a piece of paper across the counter. Chloe picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she signed her name on the dotted line. Harrison took the pen from her. He signed his full name in quick, aggressive strokes. The handwriting was sharp and commanding, nothing like the script of a man who managed construction sites for a living. Chloe stared at the aggressive loops of ink. Did he do something else before this? A desk job, maybe? She shook her head slightly, forcing her focus back to the clerk. Now was not the time to overanalyze her fake husband's penmanship. "Congratulations," the clerk said. "Stand together for the photo." Chloe moved to the designated spot. She stood stiff as a board, leaving a full foot of space between her shoulder and his. "Closer, please," the photographer called out. Harrison raised his right arm. He wrapped it behind her, his forearm resting against the small of her back. He did not let his palm touch her clothes. The heat of his body radiated through her thin coat. The flash went off. It captured Chloe's wide, startled eyes and a microscopic lift at the corner of Harrison's mouth. The clerk handed them the marriage certificate. Chloe stared at the thick paper. Her name, printed next to his, felt entirely surreal. They turned away from the window. They walked across the lobby and pushed through the revolving doors back into the freezing air. Harrison stopped on the top step. He turned to face her, his broad shoulders completely blocking the wind that tried to whip her hair. "You will pack your things and move into my apartment tonight," he said. Chloe looked up, her eyes widening. "Tonight? I am not ready for that. We can wait a few days." Harrison adjusted his left cuff. "The agreement stipulates cohabitation. If we maintain separate residences, the elders will question the validity of the arrangement. I will not risk the terms of the contract." His logic was a steel trap. Chloe thought of her stepmother waiting at home, ready to charge her rent for a room that used to be hers. She bit her lip again and gave a slow nod. Harrison's eyes tracked the movement of her teeth on her lip. He reached into his pocket and handed her a thick card. "The address and the gate code," he said. A black Audi pulled up to the curb. The driver, Alex, stepped out and opened the rear door. Harrison gestured for her to get in. "Go pack," Harrison said. "Alex will take you." Chloe looked at the spotless car. She assumed he must have rented it for the occasion. She ducked her head and slid into the leather seat, the heavy thud of the door sealing her inside.